for Unlocking Observability, your guide to getting started. My name is Caroline Geckler from Stonebranch, and I'm really excited to welcome you, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few small housekeeping things. So firstly, this event is designed with you in mind and designed to be very interactive. So please talk to us throughout the session. We have a Q&A set up. We've got some polls that will be coming your way. So we encourage you to please engage with us. And then on the right hand of your screen, you'll also see some documents that will help guide this conversation. Also, you can let us know in the chat where you're calling in from, and we might give you a shout out later on in the session. We're always really excited to see where people are joining us from on our Stonebranch events. And then in the event that we don't get to your questions, that we don't talk to you today, never fear, because we will follow up with you after the event. So really excited to introduce both of our speakers today. We have Nils Buer joining us, who is our VP of Solutions Management here at Stonebranch, as well as Seemann, who is our product management intern. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers. Nils and Len, I'll let you guys take it away.
Thanks a lot. Okay, let me start talking about observability using Universal Automation Center. So this is agenda what we are going to cover today. First of all, I give you some overview what observability is, how it can be used. Then I explain you how you can enable observability in Universal Automation Center to collect metrics data and trace data. Then we have a demo how we are going to show the observability data in Grafana. So that's the tool we are using for this demo here. And we are going to show you some use cases where we really connect Grafana with our Universal Automation Center. So you will see some automatically triggered alerting from Grafana towards Universal Automation Center. And I'm going to show you some data quality checks. So we will also look into the data, not just scheduling it, that we are going to show at the end. And finally, a Q&A. Let me start. So what is observability? So I think you already know that when you have a Universal Automation Center or basically any other scheduling tool, that you can monitor how the tasks are running, how the tasks are executed, if they failed, and so on. But this is all related to your own system, basically to your own scheduler. So this is more auditing. With observability, you get the end-to-end view. So you get the status of the tasks, but you also get maybe the status of the application that you are scheduling. Let's say you run an SAP job and this job fails, then you could also in the same time monitor that, for example, the application server was down from SAP. So you really get the end-to-end view. The other thing is that you can monitor SLAs with observability. So not just the task SLA, but the whole process SLA. So you will see if task runs late, if workflows are running longer than usual. To do this, we are also using the machine learning module in our demo, in this case from Grafana, to predict how long a task would run or if tasks are running longer than usual this day. So for this, machine learning is nicely done in Grafana. Error detection and quick resolution. So the good thing is with observability, as I said, you get the total view. So you know that a task got an error, but then you can already also go, for example, to the log file from an SAP system or in Azure to see if there's an ops pipeline, why it fails. So you really have the full view. The other thing is that you also get information on the whole system. So let's say you have a scheduler from Stonebranch, like the Universal Automation Center, then you see what the status of the database is, what the JVM machine is doing. So you get all the things around the scheduler so that you be sure that your system is in a healthy status. Yeah, how does observability now work in Universal Automation Center? So in Universal Automation Center, you have basically three main components. First of all, you have the controller, which is our controlling unit, where you set up the workflows, define all the stuff. And this universal controller, you can scrape data, metrics data, and collect those in the Prometheus database. Then you have the universal agents and the universal extensions. So our tasks, which run, for example, an SQL statement, run a file transfer, we call those extensions. And you have the agent itself. Those ones provide support for OpenTelemetry Collector. So it generates metrics and trace data, which we can then collect with the OpenTelemetry Collector. So we collect from all these different components, the traces, the metrics data, and also the log data. And then you can display it in one of these tools. You can use an open source tool like Grafana, Kibana, Loki, Tempo, and so on. But you can also use commercial tools like AppDynamics, Splunk, Datadog, Dynatrace. All of them support OpenTelemetry. In the demo, what we are going to show to you is we are using Grafana Alloy, which is the latest version of Grafana. It's a cloud version of Grafana. And with Grafana Alloy, we use also Loki for the log file, showing the log file in real time, and Tempo, which is used to display the traces. So Tempo is a bit similar to Jaeger, I would say, so you can see the trace data. The Grafana Alloy itself implements a vendor-neutral distribution of the OpenTelemetry collector. It's an agent which you install on the controller machine. Then we also collect data from external applications. So in our demo, we collect, in this case, data, for example, from Azure. So when we run an Azure Synapse pipeline, you see also the status of the Azure Synapse pipeline in the widget. But you can also collect data from any other big system or application that supports OpenTelemetry, for example, S/4HANA. Yeah, just a short view what you will see also in this demo now. So first thing is, this is a standard dashboard which you have in Grafana. So it shows you the job status, it shows you predictive analytics, all the information that you're interested in. Then you have, for example, the log file displayed. So this is something which was asked by many customers. Can we not also see the log file? So this is also possible. So via Grafana Loki, we collect the log data in real time. So you can see really in real time what's happening on the controller in the Grafana GUI. And finally, we get the trace data. So in the trace data, you really see end-to-end from the start of a job, how it goes through all the different components of our controller, agent, OMS, and then back from the agent OMS back to the controller. So you can really see the whole trace of, for example, a task execution. So all these things you will see soon in our dashboard. But before we start, let's have a quick poll on observability.
Thanks, Nils. We can go ahead and ask everyone to please give us your answers on this poll. So do you have an observability monitoring tool in place at your company right now? You can either let us know yes, no, or maybe you're not sure if you do have observability metrics right now. And maybe that's why you're joining us. So it looks like we have a pretty even spread. Oh, okay, it looks like, okay, things are moving around a little bit. You guys should be able to see the poll on stage, but it looks like most people, a little bit more than half, do have some kind of observability monitoring going on. But it does look like a good group of you have said no, or that you're not sure, and that you don't have any kind of monitoring in place going on right now.
Oh, that's great. So should we move to the second question? Because that makes an absolute sense, the second question, because if we have more than 50% having an observability tool.
Perfect. Yep. So the second question we have for you guys is, are those tools that you're using? So for those of you who said yes, are those tools that you're using commercial or open source tools? So we have a few options down here between commercial tools, open source tools. Maybe you're using both. And again, maybe you're not sure which tools your team's using. Awesome. Thank you guys for voting with us. Love the audience participation today. Awesome. So it looks like we have a lot of people who aren't sure exactly whether or not they're using commercial or open source tools. But it looks like we do have a pretty good group that are using commercial tools already, Nils. So I'll let you take it from there.
Perfect. Okay, that's good to know. So what we have been doing, actually, we are using it in our demo, an open source tool, which actually also costs money if you use it really in a professional way. So we are using Grafana because Grafana is actually known, I think, to everybody in the audience. But of course, if you're not using Grafana, you can also use your commercial tools. It's just one of the tools which we selected for our demo. So how can you now set up observability using Grafana, or it's also with the other tools, it's similar setup procedure. So the first thing is you need to enable in the Universal Automation Center OpenTelemetry and to collect metrics and traces. And to do this, you first go to the universal agents, and in the universal agent, you say, please send metrics data and send trace data. If you only want to send metrics data, that's also possible. I'll show it to you in a second. Then you need to enable it in the universal controller. So you need to tell the universal controller, yes, please use metrics. And you can also say what kind of metrics you want to display. Finally, if you want now to use this data in Grafana, you would need to create a Grafana free trial account. It doesn't cost any money. You can just go to the web page and create the free trial account. Once you have the free trial account, you can log into the Grafana UI. And actually, we are using now 3 tools from the Grafana system. We're using Prometheus as our database for collecting the metrics and traces. For collecting the metrics. Then we use Tempo to collect the trace data, and we use Loki to display the log files which we are collecting. All these is already available when you have the Grafana UI. Yeah, then optionally, you can add also other data sources to it, not only our universal controller like Azure, AWS, S4HANA, so all the systems that you want to monitor as part of your workflows. In our example, Len collected Azure so that we can show how a Synapse pipeline is running. Yeah, and finally, you can configure the preferred dashboard. So to do this, you can either start from the scratch, or you can use predefined dashboards which you can get from us. So you can get the JSON file and directly download it or upload it to your Grafana UI, or you can also check for examples in our documentation. Okay, let me explain you the setup steps. So to set up the observability or to enable the observability, it's basically just 3 files which you have to configure. The first thing is the agent configuration file. So in the agent configuration file, what you say, you want to enable metrics. So you say OTIL export metrics, yes. You give a name, how the in the Prometheus database, the metrics service is found. In this case, it's called agent Libelle. So that's an agent which connects to our Libelle controller. And you have to give the metrics endpoint where actually the metrics is sent to. In this case, this is the agent from Grafana, which is installed on the controller machine. So then actually you need to say if you want to enable tracing. So you say, yes, enable tracing. You give also the endpoint where to send the traces. So in this case, it's again the agent, the Grafana Alloy agent installed on the machine, which is the Grafana Alloy agent acts as the OpenTelemetry collector. So in this case, for the traces, it's the OLTP receiver or exporter, and this one is the, for the metrics, is the Prometheus exporter for OpenTelemetry. So that's for the universal agent. Then for the OMS, it's exactly the same setup. So you just need to add to the OMS config file that you want to enable metrics. You give a service name. You give the endpoint where to send the metrics. You need the endpoint where to send the traces. It's again the agent, the Grafana agent, which you can install on the controller machine, which acts as the OpenTelemetry collector. So that's the agent, the OMS. Now you need to go to the universal controller. For the universal controller, the config file is called UC properties. So there it's also pretty simple. So you just need to activate metrics collection and traces collection. So that's and you need to give the endpoint where actually the endpoint is. What you can now also do is you can enable so-called optional labels. So in order to not have such a high cardinality, so getting too many data, you can either enable those or leave them. So for example, if you're interested in the task name, of course, this will generate a lot of events. Then you would have also the task name in your metrics. Then you can filter by task name. So those optional ones you should only enable if you're if you really need those data. All the traces which are shown in your which you can use in your Grafana system, you can look up on our web page. So on our web page, there is actually in the Stonebranch documentation, you can see all the Prometheus metrics data which you can enable. So you have, for example, the UC history, so about all the tasks which have been failed, started, in doubt, and so on. Then you can see the task instance launch, a total number, which tasks have been late finished, which have been late started, early finished, so all the SLA information. So you can see there are lots of different measurements which you can collect and display in the Grafana dashboard. You can see always here the metric type. So counter means that's always counted up. Then you have a history where you can create buckets. And you, of course, have also things like a gauge, which can go up and down. So these are, let's say, more the controller-specific stuff. Then you have your metrics regarding to the controller itself. Then you have all the JVM metrics. This was asked by a customer yesterday, so he can see it now here that it's all there, all the JVM heuristics to measure, and so on. Then you have the universal controller build information. You have metrics on the different pool sizes. And what's also interesting is you have all the license key metrics. So how many agents are used at the moment? How many tasks have been run so far? Have you already reached your max task limit, task instance limit of the month? So all these things you can display in your Grafana dashboard. What I told you also that you can enable additional labels. So for each of these metrics, for example, the history told you can have additional labels enabled in case you need them. So in case you want really to have it per task name in your Grafana, then you can enable these labels in the UC properties. Yeah, so the last thing I want to show you before I hand over to the GUI is that actually you also need to configure the Grafana agent. So what the Grafana agent actually is, it's is a very powerful tool from Grafana. So you install it on your universal controller server, and then the Grafana agent can collect via the OpenTelemetry, implement OpenTelemetry collector, collect the metrics data and also collect the traces data, and then send those data to the, in this case, the metrics. It sends to the Prometheus in the cloud from Grafana, and the traces data it sends to Tempo in the cloud. Then we have a third possibility. This is actually our universal controller itself provides a Prometheus interface. So that means you can scrape from this endpoint, call a get command in, for example, every 15 seconds to get the latest metrics data and send them directly to the Prometheus database in the cloud. So all this is configured in this one configuration file called config alloy. And yeah, so that's all you need to know. So basically configuring the agent, the OMS, the controller, and then setting up the config file. And of course, you need to install the agent on your controller. So that's all you have to do to get it up and running. And then you can start working with the Grafana UI and configure your dashboards. Let me hand over to Len, who will show you some basic dashboard functionality and how to connect your data sources.
Thank you, Nils. All right. For enabling your observability with Grafana, we start first on the Grafana website, where we will create a free account. You can create one for free for 14 days. You have the free tier, in which you have all of Grafana Cloud's tools and can start right away. After these 14 days have been finished, you will get onto just a limited test version. So you will not lose anything of your Prometheus data. The retention will just be on 14 days. After creating your account, you will arrive at an overview page for your organization, and where you can configure everything you want, from security to your billing to also the Grafana stack, where the observability data from your UAC will be collected. For example, if we move down here on this web page, we see for our Grafana stack all the different types of tools we are using and how we can connect them. For example, if you try the Prometheus connection and go over to send metrics, we will arrive at the documentation of Grafana, where it will immediately tell us how to configure our alloy agent or alloy config file to see, okay, what username do I need? What password do I need? How do I generate my password to get all the data into your Grafana cloud? Once we have done that for all of our different types of data sources, in this case, Prometheus, Loki, and Tempo, we can go ahead and go over to our Grafana dashboard stack. In this case, we just press on Launch on Grafana, and we'll open a new tab for you where the dashboard stack is available. At the beginning, your only dashboards that will be here will be from Grafana itself, just the usual billing dashboards. If you have the free trial account, then you don't need to worry about it for now. If you head down, we can see the usage of our data that we're sending to the Grafana cloud, for example, our metrics, logs, and trace data. And to check if your data sources are correctly configured, we head over to the menu button and down under connections to the data sources tab. Here we see all the data sources connected to Grafana. From example, we go back to our Prometheus we just saw. We can see once again the URL where we're sending the data, also the username and the password that is already pre-configured in your config file. Different TLS settings you can make. Also Grafana's own metrics to trace option where all your metrics that you send get an additional label with your traces so that you can see them in Grafana Tempo. If everything is connected correctly and you're happy with your configuration, you can go down and press test to see if your connection is working. It says successfully created Prometheus API, so it works for now. But before we show our other configurations in Grafana Cloud, we first go back to data sources, and in the top right corner, we can add new external data sources. For now, we only have our internal data source from our host OS, but in this tab, we can also add other data sources like Graphite, InfluxDB, AWS, Azure, SAP S/4HANA, and many more. There are a lot of data sources which we can go through, but we just focus on, for example, Azure. You can see them in your data sources tab in the end. Before we head to the dashboards, quickly 2 things we can show you also that we configured for our use case later is once alerts. We can set Grafana managed alert rules so that if a different metric is behaving strangely or triggering a specific threshold, it will send an alert. You can configure it like that it sends an alert to an email address or calls a webhook or sends a message to your messenger. It depends really on how you set up the notification policy. For this webinar, we have a focus on our task limit reach for our PS1 controller. This is set up in mind that if 75% of our task limit, monthly task limit is reached, that will send an email and call a webhook to inform us that 75% of our tasks are used. This will be shown later in our use case by Nils. Second of all, we also have the machine learning metrics from Grafana. For this, we head down further into the alerts and IRM tab under machine learning metrics forecast. And it's pretty straightforward. As it says already, we can use our own metrics, for example, the UC history metrics, to train a machine learning program to give us a prediction. Okay, how will the metric perform a week from now or tomorrow or in a few hours? We have set up 3 of them for now with, I'm just going to go on to focus the UC history of our Libelle controller. When we head in there, we can see a lot of different graphs of predictions of how our task types, for example, will behave in the future. It takes the data from the last 3 months and then creates, as you can see up here, a prediction on how it will perform into the future for 1 week. And then we have a lot of different types. We can see the upper boundary, the lower boundary of the prediction, and also the average of it. But yeah, these 2 Grafana settings, Grafana Cloud features, we are going to use in our dashboards, which if we head over to the menu and go to our dashboards tab, we can see are already configured in our UC folder, which Nils will go into details soon. But when you're first starting with Grafana, you don't have any dashboards. You either can create your own on the top right corner on your dashboards, or import one JSON file we can download from our website to get started with a dashboard with a set preset. But yeah, that's it about the setup part. And now hand back to Nils to go into detail about the different dashboards we've built.
Great. Thanks a lot, Len. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually a sample dashboard which we created. This dashboard itself is not a single dashboard. It consists of multiple dashboards. So you can always switch the dashboards on the top here, for example, to get to the UC Health dashboard or to get to another controller, which is the PS1 controller. In my dashboard, which it's called the UC Libelle dashboard, this is actually a dashboard which focuses mainly on the UC Libelle controller. The good thing is, in one dashboard, you can have also multiple controller monitored, basically as many as you want, including other applications. So you can put them all in the same dashboard. In our case, in this UC Libelle dashboard, I have here different tabs which we created. So the first one is the tasks and traces. So that's a very basic one. So it shows you how many tasks you have executed during the last 24 hours and how the trend, you see it goes a bit down in the last minute. Also, the SAP tasks go up and so on. So these are the number of tasks which we have generated with a small trend analysis. Then you can also see here the endpoints. What's different here is that you have here also the per status. So in this case, you see 130 are green, success, and 32 are have an error. So if you put them together, you get to the 162. So this is see that it's all correct. Then you can see which tasks spend most of the time in the controller at the moment. You see the success and failure rate. You see 96% are successful, 4% have been failed. So this, I would say, very basic stuff. But then you have also more sophisticated stuff, like the ratio of variation. This is something which we have implemented for a customer. So what they wanted to know is if the tasks are running longer than usual. In this case, you see that this one, it's an SAP system copy task, which runs 13.8% longer than usual. It's still okay. So if it would maybe run 20% longer or 25% longer, then we might send an alert on those tasks. And you can see it monitors really all the different tasks we are launching in this case. So this is already a first prediction. Then actually, we have the number of tasks, cloud transfer tasks, which we have run in the last 24 hours, the number of Linux tasks. This is something I was especially interested in. Of course, you can put here also other tasks, the ones you're interested in. And the number of total jobs launched during the last 24 hours, and you will also with a nice bar graph below. What's also interesting is that you can also monitor here the universal automations log file. I think, as you all know, in our controller API or controller GUI, you cannot see directly the log file. This is now possible here in the Grafana UI. So, and it's really refreshed in real time because Loki is like a tail minus F on the log file. So it really constantly shows the log file when you do the refresh. Then actually, then we have the trace data here. So maybe I can go to look at the trace, how it looks like. So this is a trace, for example, for the task launch sleep 30 demo. So this the trace is done in tempo, and then you can see the traces in this case of this task. So that's a bit a boring one because it's just a sleep task, so it only runs in the controller. So if you would look at like a Linux task, you would see also the traces, how it goes to the OMS and so on. Yeah, so so to summarize, you see this, let's say, the basic information about how many tasks have been run, variation of tasks, you see the log file, you see the traces of each executed job. Now let's look at some other things like the forecast. So in the forecast, this is using this machine learning module, which Len just explained. So here you can see the forecast of the most important tasks. For example, you see that the cloud transfer task, you assume that in the next 24 hours, we will have 0.8. So we assume one more cloud transfer task will come. We will have less tasks than usual on the LSC tasks. You can also check this, for example, if you click here on, let's say, the timer task, then you see this is the prediction from the machine learning module on the timer task execution. And you can see that this is correct when you compare it to the value itself. So you can see 4.5 is actually the more or less the average here of the timer tasks. So you will know how many tasks we assume to run in the next period. Of course, you can always change the period here. This is 24 hours. You can also put here months or day or even minutes. So that's the nice thing with the time series database, and the data will adjust automatically. So these are forecasts. Then actually we have something like cloud data transfer, so we can look at specific integrations. So this is one of the key advantages of using Universal Automation Center, because our integration itself can create user-defined metrics. So that means you can look now, you can first of all look now into the data, or you can also create metrics which are interested for your use case. So when you do a cloud transfer task, our integration, for example, provides data on the average transfer speed, the minimum transfer speed. It tells you how many tasks fall into these buckets. For example, this means there are 9 tasks which run 5 seconds. There are 15 tasks which run in between 20 and 25 seconds, and 5 tasks which run in between 9 up to 25 seconds. Then you can see the success rate. You can see the tasks which have been started from a certain target. So, for example, 62% have been started from OneDrive. From the Amazon S3 source, we have 27%. And so this is a source, sorry. And then you see where they end up, these tasks. So this is a task-specific metrics. Then we can also do quality checks. So that means we can look directly into the data. So this is something new, because in the past, we were always just starting tasks and saying task success or failed. We could also look in the log file, trace for the log information, but we were never looking into the data. With this task, it's actually the SQL task. There we can directly look into the data and do quality checks. The 2 quality checks I'm doing here is if the number of returned rows is 20, because I want to know if I get from all the 20 regions a file. If one is missing, or I get even more files, then something is wrong and an alert will be triggered. The other thing what we are measuring is the top revenue. So we go into the task and check for the in the result of the task and check on the revenue which was generated by the SQL statement. So I can sum up the value of a column and display it here. So in this case, you see that the revenue started with very low number of revenue, and then you see it grows on the different regions, the top 5 states, or in region top 5 states. And here you see always then the sum of the revenue. Like this, you can do quality checks on the data that you are extracting. And if you see, for example, that the revenue is below a certain value, then you might know that there's something going wrong. Maybe you did not receive then all the revenue data. And you can create warnings. Just quickly, I want to quickly show you how this works. So when I'm in my Universal Controller, and I have the SQL task, which extracts from AWS Redshift the revenue value from the different states. So that's basically an SQL statement, which I'm calling against the Redshift. So this SQL statement extract the top 5 revenue. What I'm now doing, I'm using so-called user-defined metrics. So I say, this metric should be called ref by state. So this is how I can select it in Grafana. And then I say what I want to show in this metric. In this case, I want to look at the column state, or want to, let's say, per column state, I want to take the value of the revenue of the column total revenue. And this is then displayed in our in Grafana. So if I look at the result here of the log file, then you see, or SQL file, then you basically see that this is a state, the 5 state is a revenue, and would take then this revenue in the metrics and correlate it with England, CA, New York, and so on. So you can really do quality checks with the data that you're receiving. So that's actually what I want to show you on the quality checks. Now you have some other possibility that you can also look into other systems. So when you do, for example, a file transfer, or when you run, let's say, an Azure Synapse pipeline, then you can track here that the pipeline run was successful. But if it failed, you might want to look why it failed. Then you can directly go to the Microsoft Azure dashboard here. So you click on the Azure dashboard here. Sorry. So then you have here the information about about Azure, in this case, Spark applications, which are started by the Azure Synapse pipeline. You see there's one active Spark application, and you can directly click on it, and then you get directly into Azure. So you have the complete connection from, you know that the job ran in the Universal Controller. You know that there is a Spark application running from the dashboard, and you can get really the details on the Spark application by directly going into your Azure system from the Grafana dashboard. So this is how you can interlink with other systems. So now the last use case I want to show you is on a different dashboard. So you can just go here and then say, I want now to go to the health dashboard. I don't want to save the changes. So this is a dashboard I created to monitor multiple controller. So I have the PS1 controller. This is one controller which we have, and I have another controller which is the Libelle controller. Of course, you might have 20 controllers, then you would have all 20 controllers listed here. So for each controller, I'm showing you the OMS status. This was also something customers were often asked, can I just have one single view on all the OMS servers? So this you can do here. You see you have the number of client connections to the OMS. You have the number of agent connected to the controller. You see here, this is a license limit. Some customers still have the agent license limit. You see the ZOS agent on the mainframe. So there's one ZOS agent on the mainframe used by this controller. Then you see actually the task limit. So other customers do not have agent limit, they have task limits, task instance limits. So so you see in this case it's configured that if 750 is reached, then actually we send an alert, meaning task limits reached. And if the alert is sent, then actually we are sending a webhook event to the Universal Controller from Grafana, which disables automatically the admin jobs triggers. So we want to reduce the jobs as reduce the jobs that we are not getting to the 1000, which is our license limit. So like this, you can really automatically limit the stuff. So before I go and explain the rest, let me start some more tasks so that I reach the 750, so that you can see how the whole thing works. So I go to my Universal Controller, and now I manually start 200 more jobs. So the first 200 I'm starting. Oh, another 200. Sorry, another 100 jobs I'm starting. So now it takes around a minute, because the interval we put to 1 minute to get to update the Grafana dashboard. So I think we need to wait around a minute to get it. And until we get it back, I want to show you how the configuration looks like. So when I'm in this dashboard, you see there's already 760. So, it was much faster than a minute. So maybe Len put it to 5 seconds, I think. So you see the limit is already there. So what has been now happening is that, first of all, I should receive an email. And you see the email is there, so that the task limit has been reached. You see my email is there. It's even interactive, so I can click here then to see the alert rule again, why it has been finished. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that I received a webhook event from Grafana to my controller that now I should reduce the number of tasks. Reducing means not reducing, but reducing the number of tasks I will start now, so that I will never reach the 1000 until the end of the month. So for this, what I've configured is a so-called webhook receiver. So we have this, we call it universal monitor trigger. So it says Grafana task limit above warning threshold. So I reach the 750. So to monitor this, I have a webhook monitor. This webhook monitor waits for the Grafana alert event that the task limit had reached. And what it will do, it will check if in the Grafana alert event is written task limit reached for PS1. So that's the name of the alert. And if the alert says firing means now something is, you need to react. So when I receive this, then actually I'm starting the disable admin job trigger. So if I now go to my time trigger and go here, then you see this job trigger has been disabled. So these 100 jobs which normally would be started every hour will not be started until it goes down to below the 750. If it goes below the 750, then the second, then I get another webhook event from Grafana, and the second task monitor trigger, which monitors that the limit is okay again. So I show you this one also. So this one monitors also the alert name, but now it monitors for the status resolved. Resolved is always the case in Grafana when actually it falls below the 750 again. So then we enable the trigger again. Like this, you can automatically enable, disable trigger, or do any kind of other action that you want. This license use case is just one example. Of course, you can have many different examples. Let's say your SAP system gets overloaded. Then you might send a webhook event from Grafana, an alert event, which we receive with the controller and say, reduce the number of SAP tasks which we run until the alert limit gets back to resolved, so to normal status. So this is what I wanted to show you, how you can interactively work with Grafana and Universal Controller. Last thing I wanted to show you is where this webhook event is configured. So you see there's these alert rules, task limit read. You see it's firing because it's still above 750. If I look at the alert rule, you see it's 750. If it goes below 500, then actually we get this message that everything is fine again, and we can enable the trigger automatically again. The trigger itself, or the endpoint, is just configured here. So you say, send the alert messages to our universal controller webhook, which I called Grafana. So configuring this webhook is really takes not longer than 1 or 2 minutes in universal controller. Yeah, so let me summarize. So what you've seen is that you can collect metrics and traces from Universal Agent, from Universal Controller, display this data in any tool like Grafana, or of course you can also use your commercial tool as long as it supports OpenTelemetry and Prometheus databases. Then you can have automatic interaction with Grafana or your other tools using webhooks, and you can display in a single dashboard not only one controller, but any controller you have in your system. Plus, you can also monitor external system and predict task durations using the machine learning module, in this case from Grafana. But for sure, all the commercial tools would also have a machine learning module to do prediction. Yeah, let me switch back to the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Nils, and thanks, Len. Great presentations from you both. And I think there are a lot of really great learnings for our audience there today. So we can go ahead and jump in with the questions that they have thrown into the Q&A. If you guys still have questions and you're watching along, please continue to push those out to us, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. But like we said, if we don't get to your question today, we'll follow up with you one-on-one. I also wanted to mention for everybody on this call, we will be sending out a recording of today's session if you miss it or if you have to drop off early. So with that, we can go ahead and jump into the Q&A. And I'm just quickly looking. Thank you, everybody who's joining us. I think we have a lot of locations represented. I see Emily from Tulsa. Emily, I think you've been on a webinar with us before, so thanks for joining us again. I'm seeing Lakeland, Florida. We got a lot of people in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is where I'm calling from, which is where our Stonebranch office is. Sioux City, Iowa. I think I've seen you before. So thanks for joining. And then we also have someone from Chennai, India. So a global webinar. So that's really exciting and awesome. And I know you guys are in our office in Frankfurt. So a truly global webinar. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these questions that folks are asking. The first question I'm going to throw out here for you guys is this one. It is from Scott. He said, how much platform overhead is added to the platform when enabling metrics, logging, tracing for observability? I'll pop it up on stage so you guys can see it.
Okay, maybe I can answer this. So it depends really how many of these optional labels you enable. So if you're not enabling, let's say, things like that, you want to have the task name in the observability, then the number of metrics data which is generated is not that high. So at least on our controller, we don't see any really effect on it. However, I'm not what we need of course still to check is if you enable, let's say, a lot of these optional labels, then we need to see if we need to throttle down on Grafana, then the number of things we show.
Great, thanks, Nils. Let's continue on to another question. Let's see, I'm just scrolling here through some of the questions people have submitted. Another one is, can I use tools other than Grafana to collect and analyze observability data?
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. So for us, the key thing is that it supports open telemetry, and this is with most of the new tools support open telemetry. So you can basically then connect any of your tools. We just use Grafana because that's free, and it's one of the major tools on the market.
Perfect. Another question is, what is the interval to read the log files?
Yeah, so that's actually in real time. So the Loki reads the log file in real time. However, we display it in the frequency which you refresh the dashboard. But what you can always do is you can always manually click on the refresh button. Then you have the data in real time, or put a refresh frequency. I think Len, 5 seconds is even possible, no?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, another question. How does the amount of historical run data influence or impact the forecasting capabilities that we're talking about?
For example, we saw on a dashboard for a health check that we had a little gauge for predictions of our machine learning data on how the task limit would be reached in the future. It is quite high. It was like at around 8,000. This can happen due to having testing. We tested the alert triggers before the webinar, of course. And due to having a constant influx in a very short time, the whole machine learning program just assumed, okay, in a few hours, it will happen again and happen again. And this can skew the data a little bit. Of course, if there's a consistent amount of data coming in throughout the week for the last 3 months, for example, it will find patterns. For example, if no jobs are being started during the weekend, it will just say, okay, probably none, or like 1 or 2 will be started during the weekend if there are outliers. And also Grafana has an outlier detection system for your machine learning metrics, which can see, okay, there's data that is not behaving like it should be.
Great. Thanks, Len. So we have 2 last questions, and I'm going to kind of roll them up together because I think they go together. But the first one is, can this quality of observability be accomplished with UAC version 7.5? And then the other question that goes along with that says, we showed the updated configuration files in the start of the demo. How do you activate these in the UAC controller? So can you tell us a little bit about who that's available to and what version people need to have to get these observability tools?
Yeah, so they need to have version 7.5. So with 7.5, it all works fine. The thing is, in all the new integrations which we are building, because that's basically the task that you're running, we try to put more observability data in, but those one can be used by both 7.6 or 7.5. So in both it's possible.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, guys. All right. Well, I am not seeing any more questions. Oh, one more question actually just came in. All right. This is from Sven. He asks, will implementing observability in itself add costs? So is there a cost associated with using our observability tools?
So from Stonebranch side, there is no cost. So you can use the Open Telemetry collector and collect all the data. Of course, you need to have some monitoring tool like this Grafana tool. However, what we actually noticed is that even with the free version, you can already start experimenting it. Let's call it like this. So
Perfect.
to try it out, you don't need to spend any money. And maybe I can add one last thing. On our webpage, there's also described how you can set up the observability with only local tools. So you don't need to use a cloud Grafana tool. However, it had for us the advantage you don't need to install any Prometheus database, any Loki, any Tempo. Everything is already there. So it's very straightforward and easy to install. But of course, you can do it all manually on your local machines. This is described also in our documentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Nils. And thank you, Len. So I think you summarized it really well for us. If you are watching this webinar along with us and you're ready to get started with observability, you can do it today. It's accessible and easy to use. So do feel free to get started and reach out to us. We have all of the documentation and all the resources that you need to get moving and to get observability underway. I want to thank everyone who did join our session today. Like I said, we will be sending out a recording of this. So if there's anything you missed or you want to double back on, we'll share that very, very soon after we wrap here. And then the last thing is, if there are any other questions that you have that might have come up today that we didn't get to or that you forgot to ask, you can always send us a message. We're really easy to find. Just go to stonebranch.com and you can reach us there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close out today's webinar. But thank you again, Nils and Len, for the great session and all the great insights. And thank you everyone who joined us.
Thank you.
Thank you.